Revenge at any cost. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reason. As always, guys, I am here with another video for you. But before we get into that video, make sure you are liking and subscribing and hitting that bell notification so you can get regular updates for when I put out new content. I post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And guys, this is going to be a kind of spoiler, hot take, ranty review. I've gotten a lot of requests for this video because as I've been reading this book, I have had a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts surrounding the story as a whole. So this is going to be my first full spoiler talk on a book. And typically it's just going to be kind of my overall thoughts, what I thought really worked, what I thought it could have been better, and things of that nature. I will be criticizing this book in a lot of ways, but also I want to preface that I actually enjoyed this book mostly. And that book, of course, is going to be Best Served Cold by Joe Abercrombie. And before we get into this, I'm going to go ahead and give my rating right up front. I gave this book a 3 out of 5. And there are various things that kind of work into the rating that I have given Best Served Cold, which I've heard a lot of criticism about Best Served Cold, and I've also heard a lot of praise about it. And I do think it is praiseworthy, but I also think that this is a perfect book to have talks about critique. And let's just get on into it. So what is Best Served Cold about? Best Served Cold is essentially a revenge story through and through. Revenge is a dish that is best served cold, thus the title name. Essentially, we have a general of a mercenary army, Manzo Makato and her brother Benna, who are employed under Grand Duke Orso. And essentially, Grand Duke Orso gets jealous of their popularity and is afraid that Manza is going to swing popular demand and unseat him from his throne and take power. And so he decides to backstab her before this can happen. Benna is killed straight at the beginning of the book, and then Manza is also thought to have been taken care of. But before she's fully dead, she is tossed off a balcony, bounces off her brother's body, and continues rolling down a mountain, which ends up saving her life. She's then kind of Frankensteined back together and kind of goes on this revenge quest. Now, Manza was a very, very successful mercenary, and so she was able to accrue a lot of wealth. She and her brother did a lot of shady things in the pursuit of wealth, and this leads to her having a treasure trove to fall back on to go and then hire people to help her with her revenge. This brings into a great cast of characters. We get returning from the First Law trilogy, Cull Shivers, which is a Northman who wanted revenge on Logan Ninefingers for killing his brother. Even though he didn't really like his brother, he still felt kind of like he had to revenge himself upon his brother. But at the end of the First Law trilogy, ultimately he lets Logan go. And then we also have Carla Ben Ida making appearances here, Shiloh Vitari, Nikomo Koska, and we've got, of course, a lot of new characters. We've got Friendly. Friendly is like this, I would say he's definitely on the spectrum. He loves counting numbers. He doesn't really understand right and wrong, and he just goes on and he's a killer, he's a thief, and he just really loves numbers. And so he's a really interesting character. And then we've got Morveer and Day. Morveer is a master poisoner who is just kind of uppity, and he comes at a great cost. Like, he's a very expensive individual to hire. Day is his ever snacking apprentice. And so we kind of get this group together and we kind of go through. And what's really interesting is the dynamics between these characters. Essentially, Koska, if you remember, was a mercenary from the First Law trilogy and helped with the siege that takes place before they are hanged. And the backstory and the reason to bring him in is that he used to be the general before Manza of the mercenary group, and then the Duke Orzo came in and unseated him and put Manza in his place. And, Casca sees this as a betrayal, but he's really down on his luck and he needs Manza's money, so he agrees to help her. And so, all in all, this is just a really great cast of characters. Now, here's where I'm going to start kind of talking about what I really liked and what I didn't like. And essentially, I really, really liked the beginning of the story. I thought this had the potential to be one of the best standalone stories ever written. And I know that's a brave thing to say, but literally, like, it was just so refreshing. The banter between Benna and Manza and the way they interact, and then the betrayal, and her getting thrown down a monster and Frankenstein back together. I just loved all of that. I was eating it up. The bringing in of Cull Shivers was really, really working for me. I like the fact that we brought in one legacy character. However, it had been many months since I had finished last Argument of Kings. And so I had forgotten a lot of the secondary characters. And so when we start bringing in more and more and more of these legacy characters, in my opinion, all of these new characters that I was falling in love with really, really quickly kind of had to take a step back to allow for this larger cast. And that leads to what I think is one of Best Served Cold's biggest issues, and that's bloat. There's too much here. This is a 660-page, the UK, you can see that I just finished it up recently and I haven't moved my bookmark here. But it's a 660-page book. This could have easily been really tightened up, polished, and had some things removed. Essentially, we just have an extra part in here. There were 7 individuals involved in the betrayal of Manza, and she wants to kill them all. So the book has 7 parts. Specifically in, I believe, part 3, we have a chance where we're killing the sons of Orzo. And we instead throw in a King Jezal cameo because Jezal's wife is Orzo's daughter. So instead of killing both of the brothers in one fell swoop, we instead separate that and add in an extra part, which then the part I'm talking about is like part 6. And part 6, I feel, is one of the weakest parts of the story. So if we had instead killed both brothers in one fell swoop and still had a King Jezal kind of cameo, because, I mean, we see him walking in a procession, so he's clearly there. That worked enough for me. That's all the cameo of Jezal that I needed. I didn't need the callback to the fact that his wife is actually more interested in women than men, and this is the first time that he's been with a prostitute, which Manza is, posing as a prostitute, and it leads to this whole thing. Like, that whole part I thought was really cool, but I didn't need that banter. Instead, it would have been, I felt like the book could have been reworked to really slim that down, remove 90 pages right there, and we would have had a much tighter story, which would have then brought it up. That alone would have brought it up 1 star, in my opinion. That would have made this a 4-star read. Obviously, Joe Abercrombie is a master of characterization. He does characters like nobody else in the business. Whenever you read a character, you know who that character is because they are so unique, and the individual just jumps off the page. So that really, really works here. However, here in Best Served Cold, I feel Joe Abercrombie started getting a little too clever. A lot of the stories, a lot of the chapters use a single phrase, like, oh, it's a way to make a living. And then throughout the chapter, that phrase will be used over and over again to drive home a comedic point. Because if you know First Law is funny. The problem is then he uses this mechanic over and over and over and over again throughout the book. There are like 6 or 7 chapters that do that here in Best Served Cold. And after a while, it's just like, okay, I get it. It's a way to make it funny. But it stops being funny after a while. So I think he overuses that mechanic here. Also, the revenge trope gets just blown all the way to proportion. Literally, so we've got Manza seeking revenge on her 7 targets. We've then got Casca seeking revenge on Manza and his 3 lieutenants who betrayed him to put Manza in that seat. We've then got Duke Orzo seeking revenge on Monza for wanting to seek revenge on him because he betrayed her. And so then he hires out not only Morveer later in the book, because of course Morveer is now seeking out revenge on Monza because Monza didn't let him do whatever he wanted, which was wholesale slaughter. And then we've got Orso hires Shanked, which is, I think they're like a death dealer. I forget the actual name, but they're one of the ones who like consume the flesh of humans, which I don't really see his character being needed. It's like an extra POV that I felt, unless it's going to tie in into the other standalones, I didn't see Shanked being necessary. And so, whenever you're getting his viewpoints, yeah, it's really cool and it's really gory and it's really bloody, but it wasn't really necessary. And so, all in all, I'm just like, why is this guy in this book? It doesn't really pay off until really the very, last 50 pages. And even then, you're just like, okay, sure, why not? But, at one point, he debones somebody's hip and, packs it up. He's like, I'm gonna eat this later. Just because they're dead in front of him. He's like, oh, yeah, and he's talking about cooking human flesh. Whatever. The revenge trope, just everybody seeking revenge on everybody else. Morveer, seeks revenge on Monza because, Morveer's being his normal, just douchey self. And, he's just like, why is everybody being mean to me? Well, because literally she hired you to kill one person and you killed everybody in a building. Morveer's like, oh, I err on the side of caution. I'm gonna poison the entire building. And it's just kind of, Morveer is very, very irritating, and he doesn't understand why nobody likes him. And so, he kills his apprentice, and then he blames that on Monza, and really it's all down to him just being unreasonable. She's just like, listen, kill who I pay you to kill. I'm paying you 250,000 scales. That's a lot of money. And then, he gets butthurt, goes to Orso, and Orso's like, I'll pay you 1,000,000 scales. So then, Morveer just pays all this money, or kills all these people, and then makes no money. And then, there's just the characterization is, you see Monza go from, proud and, witty to broken and destitute, back up to being, a duchess. And so her character growth makes a lot of sense, but then, Abercrombie uses the miscommunication trope between her and Shivers, because, of course, she and Shivers are lovers, which poor Stephen Pacey, because I immersion read this book, Stephen Pacey has to read some of just really, really, really graphic sex scenes that just didn't work for me. I get it, they're banging. You don't have to describe the oral sex and all that. I didn't need that. It was just, for me, it was a bit too far. And then, the breaking down of Cole Shivers. At one point, as a Northman, I expect... I'm trying to figure out the best way to voice this opinion. Essentially, it felt like Joe Abercrombie tried to make Cole Shivers into another Logan Nine Fingers, but at the same time, it didn't work. He just ends up being crazy. So, Cole Shivers in this book goes to Styria to be a better man because one of his friends told him that Styria was gilded and a land of opportunity, and he realized it's just a bunch of more bullcrap. And so, he is falling on hard times, and he stumbles into Monza, who agrees to pay him 5,000 scales to come and kill some people with her. He's like, yeah, sure, but this is a one-time deal, and then she keeps bribing him and bribing him and bribing him, and then over time, he just gets beaten down and abused. He gets his eye burnt out, and, he blames Monza for this. And Monza just kind of distances herself from him, but then decides to keep sleeping with him, and she's like, oh, you're gross, but here, let me have sex with you some more. It's gross, and it just doesn't... I get that it's grimdark and the themes are, I don't know. It doesn't work for me because I am a cathartic reader and literally nobody in here gets catharsis, which I get it. That's Joe Abercrombie's shtick. And I know I'm being very, very critical here. Overall, I do like this book because, it's compelling, it's fun, but it's just, there's too much going on. The book is too busy, in my opinion. Of course, everything I'm saying here is prefaced as my opinion. I know a lot of people who love this book, or a lot of people who have issues with this book, different issues with this book. For no other reason than a lot of things in this book are just gross. Like, it's stated later that, like, actually, before I get into that, I'm going back to Cole Shivers. Cole Shivers just, the breaking down of his character, like, he goes from, like, he doesn't know if he loves Monza, which I don't know when they would have developed a relationship to lead to the way his character degrades. Like, I felt like that is definitely a weakness here in this book, would be Cole Shivers' characterization. I understand how he got there, but I still don't see why it was necessary to do that to him. Or necessary, like, he doesn't love Monza, so why is he getting all bent out of shape? Like, I don't understand that particular aspect of where he ends up. Because ultimately, like, he ends up betraying Monza, and then, like, still walks away because Monza's not as hard of an individual. Like, a lot of her legend is just blown up bullcrap. And so, she is out for revenge, but, like, she starts to waver, which is a classic trope. Once you're, like, 5 or 6 people in to your revenge, you kind of start to lose steam on it. You start to see yourself in a different light, and you start to see, oh, yes, I did some really bad things to Casca, and then those were done to me. And so, yeah, like, she kills her friend Friendly and then tries to save him when she realizes, hey, I did the exact same thing to Casca. And so she tries to save him. Fails, of course, and then feels guilty that she killed somebody that she had considered a friend. But overall, like, Shivers' characterization, I didn't understand. And then Carlette Dan Ida, I didn't understand her inclusion in this book because she keeps getting away with betraying people throughout the entire series. Like, somebody just killed this woman. I don't understand. I don't get it. Carlette Dan Ida literally walks up to Monza and is like, by the way, I've ruined all your revenge plans. I sent a letter. I let them know that you're coming. Now give me my antidote. She's like, oh, you were never poisoned, but bye, now you've got to go run for your life. But then, like, she gets a chance at redemption, and I didn't really like that. And that leads to another issue I have. Again, I mentioned earlier that I had issues with the legacy characters. Specifically, we bring in a lot of legacy characters, and because it had been so long since I had read the First Law trilogy, which is really only 6 months, I forgot who a lot of these people were. I actually had to go back in part 3 and reread 6 chapters, which added a lot of frustration to me because I had tuned out and I was just like, oh, sure, Nicola Casca. And I'm like, wait a minute, I think I know who this is. They're acting like I should know who this is. Carlette Ben Ida, this is a name I feel like I should know. Shiloh Vitalia, I feel like I should know who this is. And so then I'm like, you know what? I went back and I, like, sat down, thought about it. I went onto a wiki real quick and I was like, I know who these characters are. I refreshed myself and then I went back, and that really improved my overall enjoyment of the book. But I don't understand why Carlette Van Ida keeps getting away with murder, no matter who she's dealing with. Like, if it's Grimdark, kill her in a spectacular and satisfying fashion. Like, I would have much preferred to there have actually been a poison, and then she just refused the antidote to her, and watch her die in amusing and great ways. Like, if you're gonna go for it, just go for it. I'm kind of sick of her character. And another thing that I need to talk about from a characterization point is the fact of fake-out deaths. And this is actually an issue that comes from the narration, which is no fault of Stephen Pacey. I recognize Stephen Pacey could not have done this any other way. But at one point, Casca gets ran through. And we see he departs with a slight smile on his face, which is a hint that he may be coming back. And then Friendly leaves the group because his employer he hasn't heard from. So he goes off and is confronted later by an individual. This is 10 to 15 pages later, who says, fancy meeting you here. Now, when you're listening to the audiobook, Stephen Pacey delivers that in Casca's voice, which he has to do, of course. This comes up again later when when Vitalia's lover, who is also the assassin, meets Morvir. And while the name isn't given, it's very quickly revealed that Morvir and this individual have run into each other. And they are both kind of working towards similar goals. And they're like, oh yeah, and they kind of wave and like, let's go kill people. which is fine. But the fake out death with Casca, I felt like if you're going to reveal him later, give me like 100, give me 150 pages of thinking that that character is dead. Because listening to the audiobook, I instantly knew that Casca hadn't died. And so that really brought down the book, in my opinion. So that said, I have talked a whole lot about Best Served Cold. I've touched on a lot of points here. Ultimately, like, I enjoyed it overall. I just have so many opinions and gripes and issues with the book that I felt like I needed to finally do my first kind of hot take opinion, this could have been done better video. Because ultimately, like, I will say Joe Abercrombie is a top tier author. The characterization is great, the plot, the humor, all of that's great. The story just felt bloated and packed full and just with too many story threads to really justify a standalone. I could have easily seen this being a duology or really trimmed down. Like, I felt like somebody needed to take Joe Abercrombie to the side and be like, hey, we should probably edit this down a bit. There's just way too much going on. Like, by the time I reached part 6, I was just tired. I was exhausted, I was tired, I was cranky. I was basically saying, get to the point. Like, we didn't need 7 parts to this book. It's too much. It's too much to digest. It's too much to really enjoy. Like, it's like eating a triple-decker double fudge sundae, and like by the time you get down to like 2/3, you're just like, oh, too much sugar. I think I might puke. I'm kind of done. I hate myself. Why have I done this to myself? Like, it's too much of a good thing. And so ultimately, I feel like Best Served Cold falls far short of its incredible potential. Like, I keep harping back onto it, but if we had just trimmed it down one section, removed, like, we don't need 5 people seeking cross revenge on each other to really get the point that these are not good people. Like, none of these people are good people. They've all done bad things. They're all killers. They're all murderers. They're all monsters. I get it. And the sex scenes are just, ugh. Like, I thought it was bad in Before They Are Hanged when we get the Logan Nine Fingers and Pharaoh sex scene. The Mansa and Shivers sex scenes are just, ugh. I didn't need it. I didn't want it. I didn't ask for that. It was too graphic. It was too much. Like, I don't know. I am not a man who loves graphic sex in my books. Like, I would much prefer shorter sex scenes or fade to black. So that's just a personal preference on my part. You may love it. It definitely is a cringe-worthy sex scene. I remember reaching out to Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative going, ugh! And she was like, yeah, it's gross. The whole incest between Benna and Mansa, gross. I didn't like it in Game of Thrones. I don't like it in the First Law world. Ick. That said, guys, that is going to be the end of my ranting. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of my hot takes, my opinions. Overall, let's just have a good, cordial discussion on this book. I do recognize that Joe Abercrombie is a fantastic author. There are a lot of people who love this book, and you are correct to love this book, even if I didn't. I respect your opinion, and I want to have a good discussion on the themes and the pacing and the characters and everything that is included in this book. Overall, I did enjoy the book. I do give it a 3 out of 5. If you do like the First Law, if you do like the First Law world, I do think you are going to love Best Served Cold. So let's have a good old discussion in the comments down below, or if you want to talk on a more regular basis, make sure to check the description down below to the link to the Whistly Duo Discord. I would love to have you there. So, till next time, guys, peace out. Stay magical. Bye.